Today we're going to be working on the pivot turn, and it's basically the beginning of all that other stuff. Squirting, screw ups, splats, all that stuff comes from the pivot turn. And the basic elements of the pivot turn is, instead of leaning into your turn, you're actually going to tilt the boat slightly outside of your turn. When you tilt it outside, the water is going to load up on it and it'll start to slice under the water. What we want to do is slice it under the water a little bit and then level it off, and then what effectively has happened is you've shortened your water line, and the boat, the stern being small, is able to slice under the water, and the bow is out of the water, so it's not hard to turn that. That's the whole idea, is you create a kind of a pivot point. Slight edging of the boat, and then applying a stroke. There's generally 3 strokes that we'll use. A back sweep, a forward sweep on the other side, and then also you can do it with a bow draw to bring it around. There's probably a bunch of other ways you can do it, but that's kind of the 3 basics. But again, you're gonna get a little bit of momentum, start your turn with a stroke, tilt the boat to the outside of the turn just a little bit. When it slices under, level the boat off so that it can fly under the water smoothly. If you keep that edge, it's going to keep trying to go down, and so you don't get your travel, you don't get your smooth pivot. So slice under, level off, and you'll be doing that stroke. Back sweep, forward sweep, or bow draw. I'll show you some samples.
So what makes this all work is the combination of the edge lean and the paddle stroke, but also your body leaning to the inside of the turn while you tilt the boat to the outside of the turn. That inside lean of the upper body and your head compensate for the boat sort of biting into the water and then sliding around on your turn. You can see the different strokes all do the same thing. What's cool is you can just use them in different situations to create the turn or move that you want to make. Even in this bow draw, you can see that I've outside leaned, but I'm using the bow draw to maintain some momentum, and I'm leveling off the boat so it'll pivot on around.
Now I'll do that with a little bit more current.
Exact same moves, but we're going to use a little bit of current. On the back sweep pivot, I'm slicing the tail into the current coming downstream. On the forward sweep turn, I'm pulling a forward sweep to pull the stern under that current. And then on the bow draw, same thing. I'm doing a peel out, but reaching with a bow draw to initiate that stern as I come around for the turn.
Really cool way to play with changing directions in your slicey stern boat. And there's a lot of different ways you can use them. The basic idea is changing direction really quickly. And we're gonna head out right here. I'll do a little pivot turn to leave the eddy, and then I'm gonna use a wave right down here to do a small pivot turn and change direction as well. The pivot turn out of the eddy is real simple, just a little bit of edge angle. I'm going to use a back sweep to initiate it and drop my stern into the current. Then the wave pivot turn, I'm going to come over the wave, and then as my tail drops in, that's when I'm going to initiate, because the water coming over the drop will load on the stern, and then the bow comes up, and that enables me to change direction really quickly. Here we go.
Now as I leave the eddy, you'll see that I tilt the boat slightly upstream. I put in that stroke to shove the stern under the water, and I tilt my head to the right to compensate with that edge going under the water so I don't tump over. Then as I'm partway through, I level off the boat so it can fly smoothly under the water, and that trapped volume actually can catapult me further down the river. The next move is using the wave to make the pivot turn happen. Right there, I'm going to actually drop the tail in just as I'm dropping down the wave, and the water will press down on the stern to make the pivot happen. You can see I'm slightly tilted left and ready to pull a sweep. As I pull that sweep, the stern drops under the water with the help of the wave, and I level off and the boat pivots around. That way I can zip over to that eddy. A cool way to use the bow draw pivot turn is going into an eddy hot. You kind of do it the same way as you normally would in an eddy turn. You drive the boat into the eddy, plan a nice bow draw, and then lean to the outside of the turn. And here I'm flattened out so that stern will fly through that turn and I can pivot super quickly in the eddy. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a combination. back sweep to start the pivot, bow draw to continue it, and that way I can keep spinning. A little closer view of that combination move. A back sweep to initiate the pivot, and then a bow draw to pivot around so that you can actually continue this on and on, especially in a nice seam like this. The pivot is a great tool to use in a lot of different situations. Into eddies, out of eddies, use it in a wave or a hole to pivot quickly. It's just a great tool to have on the river.